Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. Hope you will find and eager to watch my videos. Now let's dive into this video. A retired army veteran named Jack had spent decades serving his country, enduring the chaos of war and the weight of sacrifice, dreaming of a quieter life where he could finally plant his roots. After years of saving every penny and planning every detail, he found the perfect piece of land, a sprawling, peaceful plot in the countryside, kissed by golden sunlight and cradled by rolling hills. It was more than just dirt and grass to him. It was a canvas for his dream home, a sanctuary where he could wake up to birdsong instead of gunfire, sip coffee on a porch he'd build with his own hands, and let the scars of his past fade into the stillness. Jack wasn't a man of extravagance. His vision was simple. A modest cabin, a small garden, maybe a rocking chair to watch the world go by. But this land meant everything to him. A reward for a life of service, a promise he'd made to himself during those long, sleepless nights in the barracks. He signed the deed with a steady hand, feeling a rare swell of pride, and drove out to his new haven with a truck full of tools and a heart full of hope. Little did he know, this dream was about to be tested, not by nature or time, but by the greed of those who saw his solitude as weakness. For Jack, this wasn't just about owning land. It was about claiming peace, and he'd fight for it with the same grit that had carried him through battle. The lesson here is raw and real. When you've earned something through blood and sweat, don't let anyone take it without a fight. Know what's yours, protect it, and never assume the world will play fair. Meanwhile, just a few miles away, an upscale community thrived under the iron grip of an influential homeowners association, a group drunk on power and obsessed with expansion. This wasn't your average HOA with petty rules about lawn height or mailbox colors. These were calculating players, a clique of wealthy suits who saw every acre as a dollar sign, every boundary as a challenge to bulldoze. They'd already swallowed up neighboring plots, turning quiet fields into manicured cul-de-sacs with overpriced homes, convincing themselves they were building a utopia while pocketing fat profits. Jack's land caught their eye like a shiny prize, an untapped gold mine they could exploit to fuel their greedy empire. Without a shred of legality, they started redrawing maps, claiming his property as their own, plotting to slap luxury houses on it and sell them to the highest bidders. They didn't bother with permits or permission. Why would they? To them, rules were for the little people, and Jack was just a speck on their radar, an old man living alone who'd surely roll over. Their arrogance was palpable, a crusty mix of entitlement and ignorance, as they sent surveyors to stake out his land and contractors to break ground, all while sipping champagne at board meetings and toasting their unstoppable reign. But here's the hook that stings. Greed blinds you, it makes you sloppy, it makes you underestimate, and it sets you up for a fall you never see coming. The advice: if you're dealing with bullies who think they own the world, don't just react. Outsmart them because their overconfidence is your weapon. Jack wasn't blind to the rumble of machinery creeping closer, the strangers trampling his grass with their measuring tapes and smug grins. He'd warned them, calmly at first, his voice steady as he stood on his porch, deed in hand, telling them they were trespassing on private property. The HO laughed it off, dismissing him as a relic, a lone wolf too tired to bite. They sent him letters dripping with condescension, offering to buy his land for pennies, implying he should be grateful for their generosity. When he refused, their tone shifted. Threats slipped through the cracks, subtle at first, then bolder with late-night calls and uninvited visits from slick-talking reps who leaned on his fence and smirked. They figured he'd crack, that a retired vet with no family nearby couldn't possibly stand up to their machine. But Jack wasn't just some old man. He was a survivor, forged in the fire of discipline and defiance, and he'd faced worse than a pack of desk jockey tyrants. Their bullying only sharpened his resolve, each insult fueling a quiet, simmering anger that they mistook for surrender. The HOA thought they were playing chess with a pawn, but Jack was a king in disguise, and he'd already seen their endgame. This is where the emotion kicks in. Never underestimate someone who's been through hell. They've got nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The lesson for you: when someone tries to push you around, don't just take it. Dig in, stand tall, and let them trip over their own arrogance. Unbeknownst to the HOA, Jack wasn't the type to sign anything without reading the fine print. Years in the military had taught him that details win wars. Long before the first bulldozer rolled in, he'd pored over his land deed, a weathered document that held more power than the HOA could imagine. Buried in its faded ink were clauses, ironclad and unbreakable, stating that no commercial or residential construction could happen on his property without his explicit approval. It was a legal shield, a gift from some long-dead landowner who'd foreseen trouble like this, and Jack had memorized every word. The HOA, in their rush to conquer, hadn't bothered to check. Why would they, when they assumed money and influence could rewrite reality? Jack kept this ace up his sleeve, saying nothing as they poured concrete and framed walls, letting them dig their own grave one nail at a time. His silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy, a crusty old trick from a man who knew timing was everything. He'd sit by his window, watching their progress with a glint in his eye, knowing they were building on borrowed ground. The hook here is deliciously tense. The enemy's ignorance is your strength, and patience can turn a trap into a triumph. Want advice? If you're facing a fight, don't just swing. Study your ground, find your leverage, and let the other side hang themselves with their own rope. Jack's military mind didn't stop at paperwork. He'd been a strategist, a master of terrain, and he'd turned his land into a battlefield without firing a shot. Months earlier, when he'd first moved in, he'd taken his time walking the property, mapping it in his head like a mission zone. With a soldier's precision, he'd secretly marked the true boundaries. Steel stakes driven deep, hidden under brush, invisible to the untrained eye. The HOA's surveyors, lazy and overpaid, had relied on outdated maps and their own hubris, missing the real lines by yards. Now, as their shiny new homes rose on Jack's soil, the evidence was undeniable. Every foundation, every driveway, every manicured lawn was an illegal trespass, plain as day to anyone with a tape measure and a brain. Jack didn't gloat or tip his hand. He just waited, letting them pile up their mistakes, each brick a nail in their coffin. His marks were a silent rebellion, a middle finger to their greed, and he savored the thought of their faces when the truth hit. This is where the crusty edge shines. Preparation isn't flashy, but it's deadly, and a quiet move can outsmart a loud one. The lesson hooks you hard. Know your territory, mark your lines, and when the time's right, let the facts do the fighting. Advice for your own battles. Don't rush to prove you're right. Set the stage, gather your proof, and watch your opponent stumble into checkmate. As the HOA's shiny new homes sprouted like weeds on Jack's land, they unknowingly tied their fates to a ticking time bomb buried beneath the surface. His well, the lifeblood of the entire operation. When Jack bought the property, he'd secured not just the dirt, but the water rights that came with it, a detail the HOA's overconfident developers never bothered to investigate. They'd drilled their pipes straight into his aquifer, pumping his water to fill their sparkling sinks and manicured sprinklers, assuming the countryside's bounty was theirs for the taking. Jack watched from his porch, a crusty smirk tugging at his lips, knowing he held the valve to their survival. Legally, he could twist that valve shut any day, leaving their McMansions high and dry, toilets unflushable, lawns withering under the sun, a glorious silent checkmate. He didn't rush to pull the trigger, though. He let them settle in, let their arrogance deepen, savoring the moment he'd reveal their lifeline rested in his calloused hands. The emotion here is thick. Imagine building your dream on stolen ground, only to find the rugs about to be yanked out. The hook. Power isn't always loud. It's in the quiet things you control. Advice for you. When someone's riding high on your dime, don't just scream. Find the switch they don't see and hold it tight until the perfect moment. The HOA's blunders didn't stop at water. They'd paved their downfall with a road that snaked right through Jack's domain, a glaring oversight that made their whole plan crumble under its own weight. This wasn't some public thoroughfare. It was a private artery, deeded to Jack alone, a ribbon of asphalt they'd arrogantly assumed they could claim. Every SUV rolling into their fancy new cul-de-sac, every delivery truck hauling granite countertops, crossed a line that Jack could legally barricade with a flick of his wrist. He pictured it sometimes, throwing up a gate, maybe a sign, "Trespassers beware," and watching their smug faces twist as they realized their dream homes were landlocked, cut off from the world by the old vet they dismissed. He didn't act yet, though. He let them pour money into their castles, let residents move in, let the stakes climb higher. The crusty thrill was in the waiting, knowing he could drop the hammer whenever he chose. This is pure, raw tension. They built an empire on a foundation they didn't own, and Jack held the key to its collapse. The lesson hooks deep. Don't build your life on someone else's turf without checking the rules. Facing a similar mess, don't just react. Find the choke point, the thing they need from you, and use it to turn the tables when they least expect it. While the HOA strutted around like untouchable kings, Jack wasn't alone in his corner. He had an ace up his sleeve named Tom, a real estate lawyer with a mind like a steel trap and a loyalty forged in decades of friendship. Tom wasn't some slick city shark. He was a grizzled vet himself, a man who'd swapped combat boots for briefcases but kept the same fight in his bones. When Jack called him up, voice low and steady, Tom didn't hesitate. He drove out that same night, deed in hand, ready to wage war in the courtroom instead of the battlefield. Together they dissected every angle, every clause, every misstep the HOA had made, building a case so airtight it could choke the life out of their greed. Before the HOA even sniffed trouble, Tom filed the lawsuit, a legal ambush that hit like a mortar round. Quiet, precise, and devastating. Jack trusted Tom with his life and now his land, knowing this was no game of bluff. It was a calculated strike. The emotion swells here. Friendship and justice intertwining to take down a bully. The hook. A good ally can turn a fight into a victory. Advice. Don't go it alone. Find your Tom, someone who knows the game and has your back, and hit hard before the enemy sees you coming. When the courtroom showdown finally arrived, the HO board swaggered in, suits pressed and chins high, thinking they could steamroll Jack with their money and menace. They leaned across the table, voices dripping with fake pity, then sharp threats, trying to rattle the old man who sat there, calm as a stone. But Jack wasn't fazed. He'd stared down worse than these paper tigers in jungles and deserts, and he had the truth on his side. One by one, he laid out his evidence. The deed's hidden clauses, the secret boundary markers, the water rights they'd stolen, the road they'd hijacked. Each document landed like a grenade, blowing holes in their smug defense, their lawyers scrambling as the judge's gavel loomed. Jack didn't yell or gloat. He just spoke, voice rough but steady, letting the facts carve up their lies. The room felt electric, the tension crusty and real. Here was a man they'd underestimated, tearing their world apart with nothing but paper and grit. The hook sinks in. Preparation beats intimidation every time. Lesson. When you're up against a giant, don't flinch. Arm yourself with proof and let it do the talking. Advice for your own showdown. Stay cool, stack your deck, and watch them squirm when the truth hits. As the case unfolded, the HOA's shiny empire started to crack, and the world took notice. Local news vans rolled in, headlines screamed, and social media buzzed with Jack's story. Prospective buyers who'd been drooling over those overpriced homes pulled out fast, smelling the rot of a sinking ship. Property values tanked, turning million-dollar fantasies into bargain bin liabilities, while furious residents who'd already moved in started filing their own lawsuits against the HOA, piling on the chaos. The board's once polished image shattered, greedy villains unmasked, scrambling to save face as their dream of domination crumbled. Jack's quiet stand had sparked a wildfire, exposing their corruption to the sun, and he watched it burn with a soldier's satisfaction, knowing he'd lit the match without lifting a finger beyond the law. The emotion here is triumphant yet gritty. A lone man's fight toppling a Goliath, not with fists but with righteousness. The hook. One spark of truth can torch a lie. Lesson for you. When you're right, don't back down. Let the ripple effect bury your enemies. Advice. Stand firm, get loud if you must, and let the crowd's outrage finish what you started. With the HOA reeling from their courtroom thrashing and their empire crumbling under the weight of their own greed, Jack could have gone for the jugular, cut off their water, block their road, and watch them drown in their mess, but he didn't. Instead, he threw them a curveball that hit harder than revenge. An offer to sell his land, but at 5 times the market price, cash up front, on his terms, no negotiation. It was a masterstroke, crusty, bold, and dripping with the kind of justice that stings deep. He wasn't just taking their money. He was making them pay for every smirk, every threat, every bulldozer they'd rolled over his dream. The board squirmed, their wallets bleeding, but they had no choice. Jack held all the cards, and they'd built their future on his soil. The emotion here is electric. A man who'd been dismissed as weak flipping the script, turning their arrogance into his profit. The hook sinks in fast. Sometimes the best payback isn't destruction, it's outsmarting them and walking away richer. The lesson: don't just fight to win. Fight to win big and make them regret crossing you. Advice for your own battles. When you've got the upper hand, don't settle for petty. Aim high, set your price, and make them choke on their own medicine. Down in the HOA's shiny new neighborhood, the residents weren't sipping champagne anymore. They were fuming, their dream homes tainted by the stench of corruption and incompetence. The water they drank, the roads they drove, all hung by a thread Jack could cut, and they knew it. Fed up with the board's lies and the plummeting value of their investments, they didn't just grumble, they revolted. At a tense, packed meeting, voices raw with anger, they voted out the old guard, those slick suits who'd gambled their lives on stolen land. In their place, they demanded leaders with spines, people who'd put ethics over profit and clean up the mess. It was a gritty uprising, a community clawing back control from the jaws of greed. And Jack's stand had lit the fuse. The tension crackles here. Ordinary folks pushed too far, taking power into their own hands. The hook: when the top fails, the bottom can rise. Lesson for you: if you're stuck under bad leadership, don't just take it. Organize, fight, and replace them with something better. Advice: rally your people, channel that rage, and don't stop until the rot's gone. Jack's war with the HOA didn't just end in a courtroom. It exploded online, a wildfire of tweets, posts, and viral videos that turned his story into a battle cry for the little guy. People weren't just watching. They were learning, digging into their own deeds, Googling property laws, and arming themselves against the kind of predatory nonsense Jack had crushed. His tale spread like gospel, crusty, real, and packed with a kind of underdog grit that hooks you deep. Homeowners everywhere started asking questions. What's in my contract? Who's got my water rights? Can they take my land? Jack became a symbol, a retired vet who'd outfoxed a giant, proving that knowledge isn't just power, it's armor. The emotion swells. Pride, defiance, a spark of hope for anyone who's ever felt stepped on. The hook: one man's fight can wake up a million. Lesson here: don't sleep on your rights. Learn them, use them, and inspire others to do the same. Advice: if you're facing a bully, hit the books, spread the word, and turn your struggle into a movement that lasts. With the dust settled and the HOA's money in his pocket, Jack didn't waste a second. He got to work building his dream home, the one he'd seen in his mind through every tour of duty. The cabin rose slow and steady, each nail a victory, each board a testament to his patience and steel. He dug a garden, set up that rocking chair, and watched the sun dip below the hills from a porch that smelled of fresh pine and hard-earned peace. The land was his again, uncontested, a quiet kingdom where no one could touch him. The payout: 5 times what they'd offered in their cheapskate threats, funded it all, a sweet, crusty twist of fate that made every fight worth it. The emotion hits hard. Triumph, solitude, a man at rest after proving his point. The hook: victory tastes best when it's yours alone. Lesson: stick it out, play smart, and build what you deserve with the spoils of your war. Advice for you: when you win, don't gloat. Use it to create something untouchable, something that's yours to the core, and let the world see what you're made of. Jack's saga wasn't just a win. It was a gritty, emotional blueprint for anyone with a dream and a bully in their way, a lesson carved in sweat and strategy. The moral wasn't soft or preachy. It was raw. Know your property rights down to the letter, stand like a rock when injustice comes knocking, and never ever underestimate the power of being ready. He'd shown that preparation isn't just defense. It's a weapon, sharper than any lawyer's tongue or judge's gavel. The HO learned it the hard way. Their empire reduced to a cautionary tale, while Jack's cabin stood as proof that wisdom and grit outlast greed every time. The hook here is universal. Whether it's land, a job, or your peace, fight for it with everything you've got. The emotion: It's pride, it's relief. It's a middle finger to every tyrant who thinks they can take what's yours. Lesson for your life. Don't wait for trouble to teach you. Get ahead of it, know your ground, and be the one they can't break. Advice. Start today. Check your rights, plan your moves, and when the time comes, hit back so hard they'll wish they'd never met you.